Hello everybody, it's Fufu here and welcome back for another top 5 most wanted video. Today we're going to be counting down the top 5 most wanted Mega Evolutions for Generation 2 Pokemon. Those are Pokemon from the Johto region. There are currently only 6 Mega Evolutions out of the Johto Pokemon, and there are tons of potential Pokemon that could get a Mega. So this is going to be a really interesting one. As usual, this list is not just my opinions, but I actually created a poll which I shared on Twitter, and it got hundreds of votes, so we can really find out what would the most popular Mega Evolution for Generation 2 Pokemon be. If you want to be involved in the next poll, follow me on Twitter, and now let's count down the top 5 most wanted Generation 2 Mega Evolutions. Number 5. In at number 5 is Girafarig. This cool palindromic Pokemon has a typing that was unique at the time that it came out, but it now shares that Psychic normal typing with Meloetta and Oranguru, who are arguably better in competitive spheres. Girafarig's stats are mediocre, it's not so fast, and it's not particularly strong, and it's actually kind of frail. Outside of its ability Sap Sipper, which grants it an immunity to grass type attacks and an attack boost if it's hit by one, there's nothing really to write home about with this Pokemon. So it's kind of understandable why people want to see it get a Mega Evolution and a refresh. So how would that work? Well, its typing of Psychic Normal would probably change. I think a lot of Mega Girafarig designs see its tail end get a lot bigger or a lot more significant in terms of the design, and we know that the tail end is the reason why Girafarig gets the move Crunch, which is a dark type move, so I think it's quite likely that we'd see Girafarig turn into a Psychic dark type Pokemon. In terms of the stat changes, I think that it would be good to see a big change in one of its offensive stats. I'm showing you a big boost in special attack, but equally it could be a big boost in attack instead, because actually Girafarig can attack on either its attacking stat or its special attacking stat right now, and the tail end getting bigger could influence either one of those stats. I think it would also be really nice to see a little boost in its defenses, because it's actually kind of frail at the moment, and also a boost in its speed. 105 speed is really nice because it outspeeds that critical 100 speed tier, so it's going to be faster than a lot of other Pokemon and can really pressure a team, especially with that nice attack stat now. And 85 defenses means that it shouldn't go down to any one hit too easily unless it's super effective. Now, where this set gets really interesting is the ability. I've actually taken inspiration from a fan-made Pokemon game here in Pokemon Insurgents, which has Mega Girafarig have the ability Spectral Jaws. Now, we know that the tail end is responsible for Girafarig learning the biting move Crunch, and this takes it even further. Girafarig doesn't currently learn many biting moves, but it would be nice if it got the Elemental Fangs and that Crunch attack, and also now there is the Psychic Fangs attack that Bruxish learns, and also some other Pokemon now. It would be really cool to see Girafarig get that move as well. So what Spectral Jaws does would be to give a boost to these biting moves and also make them into special attacks. So that's why I've increased the special attack stat there, and all of these biting moves would go off the special attack stat. So can you imagine a boosted Crunch or a boosted Psychic Fangs with the same type attack bonus now, and then all the other Fangs for nice coverage moves. Equally, as I said earlier, you could instead just increase the attack stat rather than the special attack stat, because we already have an ability to cover that, and you could just go straight for the strong jaw ability with the Fang moves, with Crunch, with Psychic Fang. It could be a really interesting Pokemon with that tail end taking over, and that's something I'd really like to see. Number 4. NOCTOWL. I have to say, I am so happy this Pokemon made the list, because this would have been my choice. Mega NOCTOWL is something that I really want. It's my personal favourite early root bird. I just think that its spooky, wise old owl design is pretty neat. Unfortunately, it hasn't received any attention for a long time and can't now compete with Mega Pidgeot, for example, or Gale Wing's Talonflame, even though it's been nerfed, and Staraptor's just so powerful, Swellow's so fast, so for an early root bird it really gets kind of a raw deal, and that's why I would like to see it get a Mega Evolution. One thing it does have going for it in terms of that is that its HP stat is really good already with base 100 HP. It means that when it Mega Evolves, it can really benefit from the other stat boosts, because HP never increases when you Mega Evolve, so having a good one already always helps. So let's look at how Mega NOCTOWL could happen. I would really like to see a flying ghost type Mega NOCTOWL. Some people say flying psychic, but I think we've got far too many flying psychic types already. Flying ghost would be way cooler. We've got Driftblim, but Mega NOCTOWL actually has some things going for it well above Driftblim. That's mainly in the move pool. Driftblim's move pool is a bit strange. NOCTOWL gets that really important roost. And in terms of the stats, I would like to see a lot of boosts in the defenses, because Flying Ghost is not a bad defensive typing, and as I say, NOCTOWL has amazing HP already, so if we see a really big increase in that defense stat, and a decent increase in the special defense stat, which is already pretty good, then this Pokemon could be really bulky, and it would be really nice to see that. Where else I would like to see the boost is definitely in that special attack stat, just to make it a little bit more usable, but not actually boosting it into crazy spheres like you might see on other Megas. In terms of abilities, I initially thought that maybe an accuracy boosting ability like No Guard or Compound Eyes could be pretty interesting, because NOCTOWL has Hypnosis, which is actually kind of designed around. Hypnosis is a sleep inducing move, but it's pretty inaccurate, so boosting its accuracy could be pretty nice. But really, that's the only reason you would do it. It doesn't currently get Hurricane. Maybe we could give it Hurricane with that No Guard ability, but then I'm thinking that's edging a bit close to Mega Pidgeot territory. So then another idea I had was Gale Wings. Gale Wings has been nerfed this generation. Talonflame is not used half as much because you have to be at full HP to get your flying moves to have that priority boost. Where I think NOCTOWL would do quite well with this ability is that it's bulky and not too fast. So it could go for a slow roost, and at the end of the turn it would be at full health. Then it would be able to go for a priority flying type attack like Air Slash, which doesn't have any recoil, unlike Talonflame's Brave Bird, so that it would potentially be able to go for multiple air slashes without being taken down from full HP. So I think actually Gale Wings would be really interesting to see on a more defensive Pokemon, and that's probably the one I'd pick out of any of its other moves. So in terms of what role it would play, I think it could be a very nice support mon. It gets things like Defog and Roost and U-turn, so it could really pressure an opponent's team by switching in. Blocking Rapid Spin is a very useful thing for it to be able to do, and it's also got the fighting and the ground type immunity, very useful. But also maybe a Calm Mind user, because it's so bulky, you could make it a defensive set with Calm Mind and Roost, and its dual stabs, its flying type moves and its ghost type moves are only resisted by a handful of Pokemon, namely the Tyranitar family, Bisharp family, and the Heliolisk family. So anything else will be hit at least neutrally, which is very good. One last thing to note is with going from a normal to a ghost type, it could create some really interesting mind games, because normal types are immune to that ghost typing, so any incoming ghost attacks you'd be immune to. However, when you Mega Evolve, you're then weak to them, so the opponent will have to guess whether you're going to Mega Evolve or not in terms of when they're going to go for a ghost type attack, so that would be really neat to see. This is a Pokemon that I really like. I think it's probably my favourite Mega that I've speculated about so far, and I so want this to happen. Number 3, Dunsparce. Dunsparce is a really interesting Pokemon, again with a high HP stat that will help it out, but not really anything else of note. Maybe its ability though, being Serene Grace, making all of its moves, secondary effects more likely to happen. That's a pretty neat ability. A lot of people say a regular evolution would be great for Dunsparce, because that would allow Dunsparce itself to use a Violite, and it would be a very bulky Pokemon with access to recovery in Roost. But equally, I think a Mega Evolution would be great. In terms of things it has in its arsenal already, as I say, it's got Roost, it's also got 100% accurate Glare to paralyze the opponent, and then it's also got Coil as a boosting move and Stealth Rock to support your team by getting up entry hazards. So with the Mega Evolution, I think it would be really neat to see this turn into a normal Dragon type Pokemon. That would give Dunsparce a lot of resistances, although it does give it a couple more weaknesses too. And in terms of the stat distribution, I would see impressive boosts to its attack and its defense stat, and also I'd like to see a boost to its special defense stat. I don't know if its speed would go up too much. There are a number of different designs for a Mega Dunsparce. Some of them are flying, some of them aren't. If it does go airborne, I think its speed might increase while its special attack might decrease. If it doesn't, then maybe its speed won't increase too much. In terms of its ability, I think Serene Grace is a very useful one to keep. It's got some horrible moves like Headbutt that can really cause the opponent to flinch, especially if you paralyze them with Glare. Glare first, but at least it would make it a lot more viable because right now we don't see Dunsparce a whole lot. I still think with this stats distribution that Coil would probably be the most likely set, but you could also have more of just a general support Pokemon with Recovery, with Glare, with Headbutt, maybe with some other coverage moves, something like that. So it could be a really cool Pokemon, and actually I'm quite surprised to see it on this list and so high as well, but I can see why, because it's a bit of an odd Pokemon and it would be nice to be able to use it competitively a bit more. Number 2, Ledian. This is another forgotten bug type Pokemon, almost following exactly in the footsteps, or should that be wing flutters, of Butterfree from the previous video that scored very highly in the Generation 1 list. There is very little that it can currently do well, with Bug Flying typing holding it back from being a very good utility Pokemon, despite its move pool really meaning that that's the role it should play. It's got very low offensive stats too, which I think is a bit of a travesty. It's a boxing ladybird. Why has it got such low attack and an Iron Fist ability? It makes no sense. So how do we improve this with a Mega Evolution? Well, first of all, the typing really should be bug fighting. It should have been bug fighting from the beginning. This means that it doesn't have that horrible 4x weakness to the rock type, and it also means that it has pretty good coverage. We see a number of bug fighting types out there right now because Buzzwole and Pheromosa have just entered the game while we already have Heracross and its Mega Evolution 2. Very powerful bug fighting types, so how can Ledian compete there? Well, really we have to give it the ability Huge Power. It needs to become this muscly hench ladybird, and so I think that's really, with its stats, the only way to make it viable at all. But when it gets that ability, I think we then don't need to increase its attack stat too much. So maybe only 40 points into that attack stat to bring it to 75. When doubled with Huge Power, that actually hits really hard. That's a much higher attack stat than Azumarill, for example, which we all know is a very hard hitter. Where the rest of the points go is really interesting because we're going to give them a little bit to speed to make Ledian have that really nice 105 speed tier. It outspeeds a lot of Pokemon, very useful to be that fast. And then also defense gets a massive boost. This means that Ledian is no longer frail, the typing is much better in terms of defensive typing, and it also hits really hard. So it basically completely changes the role of Ledian. It can pack a punch, but it can now also perform that utility role that it really struggled with before. It gets access to Light Screen and Reflect, for example. It gets access to Encore, you can Roost, you can U-turn, and therefore I think it really carves its own niche with that 105 speed, and I think this could be a great Mega Evolution. I'm glad Ledian got so high because I do agree with you that it needs more love. Number 1. Typhlosion. I cannot believe that we have not got to a starter Pokemon yet. I thought this list would be dominated by them, but we actually only see one. It does take the top spot though, and that is going to be Typhlosion. Meganium and Feraligatr, I am sorry. Typhlosion is pretty powerful already. Starters generally have very good stats, and it has really nice moves like Eruption that already pack a punch. But we want to see this thing get a Mega Evolution because starter Megas tend to be awesome, and Typhlosion has a lot of nostalgia around it too. So, how are we going to do this? Well, I have talked about a Mega Typhlosion before, and I said that it would probably keep its Mono Fire typing because that's what Generation 2 Pokemon do. They only are monotypes, whereas Generation 1 Pokemon, for example, Charizard has Fire Flying, Venusaur has Grass Poison. Generation 2, it really was nice that it stuck to those monotypings, but a lot of people commented that actually a fire ground typing for the Mega would be really cool, and actually I have been swayed. Typhlosion is based off a honey badger, they're known to be very good diggers and they live in their holes, so fire ground typing makes sense because honey badgers have an affinity for the ground. And another thing that people said about last time, because I just boosted its special attack, which is probably the expected thing that most people would turn to, but actually I like this tactic better in terms of boosting its attack stat a lot more and making it a much more viable mixed attacker. Typhlosion already has a great physical move pool with access to things like Earthquake to hit other fire types super effectively when you can't hit them with your fire type moves, and also Thunder Punch to hit those water types that would also resist your fire type moves. So boosting your attack stat really makes Typhlosion a much better and much more versatile attacker, and it would hit super hard with the amount of attack investment that I've given it. I've also given it a tiny little boost in defense to be able to take on some more physical hits, and also that represents ground typing a bit more as well. Ground types generally are a bit more physical physically bulky than specially bulky. And finally, I've given it more speed. Now 120 speed is fantastic, it's a really nice speed tier to hit, and especially for something this powerful already, its eruptions are going to be so powerful, but it's now got access to a powerful Flare Blitz, Earthquake, Thunder Punch. All of these things make this Pokemon very unpredictable, which is always a dangerous threat for your opponent, and I like that. In terms of the abilities, I had a really nice idea that maybe it could get the White Smoke ability, which I think it could benefit from. What it would do is it means that stats can't be dropped, so now that it's a physical attacker, you might worry about Intimidate opponents because they would be able to drop your physical attack. But White Smoke would prevent that. The other thing would mean that you don't get the speed drop from Sticky Web teams, which also could be very helpful. An alternative to this would be the Moxie ability, which boosts your attack when you get a KO. I think both of these abilities would be really nice to see, and I would actually really like to see this Mega Typhlosion. I think it would really change its role, and it would make your opponent have to guess whether the Typhlosion on your team is Mega, or is just a Choice Specs variant, for example, which hits super hard on the special side, whereas this would hit much harder on the physical side. So I think that's a really cool way of making Typhlosion a really fresh, new Mega. So thank you very much for voting. I think Typhlosion is a great #1 pick for the Johto region, but actually I've really enjoyed the entirety of this list. Again, it's taken me off guard, and that's why I like doing these top 5 polls. So if you want to be involved in the next one for the Hoenn region, please go over to my Twitter now, and I will probably be tweeting that out soon. We might actually be on the Sinnoh region by then, so please look out for that. I'll tweet out the poll and you can get involved. Thank you very much for watching. I've been foofootoo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.